All right, hello everyone. This has been an amazing day. We're almost through. I know we're all really sad, but also excited for the reception. I'm Dina Kozlov. I'm a product manager at Cloudflare. And these last 6 months, I've gotten to work with our engineering team to figure out how do we make it as easy as possible to build MCP servers that don't suck. And earlier, Jerome was asking everyone who has built an MCP server. But now I want to ask you something slightly different. Who has built a remote MCP server? Show of hands. Okay, very nice. Love to see it. Next question, who has used an MCP server? Okay. I would have thought everybody, but no worries. I am glad a lot of you have already built remote MCP servers. By the end of this talk, we're actually going to build one together. And so what I really hope you take away from this is it really is that easy. And ideally, if we were to have this conference 1 week from now, and I asked that question again, everybody would raise their hand. But MCP is really special. I remember the very first time that I used an MCP server. The day was November 25th. And the MCP announcement just came out. And it was perfect timing because it was around the time that I started tinkering with different personal projects. I myself am not the best coder. It is why I am a product manager. But I was using Claude to help me write code. And I was taking it and I was deploying it on Cloudflare and building out different applications, websites, etc. And at first, the experience was really magical, but after a while, I was like, okay, this is a lot of copying and pasting, and ideally, Claude can just talk to Cloudflare directly and get it deployed, and I'm just the big brains behind the whole operation. And so that's why I was so excited about MCP, and as soon as the announcement came out, I was like, okay, Claude, help me build an MCP server that can take a piece of code and deploy it to Cloudflare, and so together, we built a Cloudflare MCP server, and the moment of truth came when I was like, okay, can you build a website that says, good morning, sunshine? And I clicked, enter, and it built this with one sentence, and that was incredible. And from there, my journey with Claude really started. And what I loved about using Claude was that every interaction just kept getting better and better. And a big reason for that is because Claude keeps track of our conversation history. And so whenever I ask it for ideas, for example, it can tell me, here are some thoughts, and I can say, I like this. This one, maybe not so much. Let's table that for later. And it will remember that. And so when we go to build things, it will already know what I like, what I don't like. And it kind of feels like having a personal assistant that helps you use your favorite service. It really is magical. And like I said, a big part of the reason why using something like MCP feels so good is because every time you make a tool call, it just keeps getting better and better. And you would think that a big part of that is because the context itself lives on the MCP client, so Claude. But actually, if you go to start a new chat session, or if you decide to use a new MCP client, you realize the downfall of having that context live on the client, because all of that progress is lost, and it's like you're going through the whole interaction for the first time. So, let's say I'm coding with Claude, it's helping me build things on Cloudflare. I then go to Cursor, or I use my own AI agent, and I ask it to help with the same thing. It's like, I don't know what you were talking about. And so what I'm trying to say here is that it really is important for the MCP server to be able to hold some kind of memory and context about the user itself. And so instead of telling you about it, why don't I show you what this can look like? So, I don't know. This is what happens when I guess you do extended share. You can't really see what you're sharing, but let me try my best. Wow, this really is a whole physics challenge. All right. So I don't know what everybody's New Year's resolutions have been. Mine has been to read more. And reading is a really personal thing. I have my own preferences. I have my own authors that I like. Somebody else has a different taste. And so I wanted to make the selection process a bit easier, so I built an MCP server called Best Reads. I'm actually going to stop extending because I don't think I can do the whole demo this way, but let me real quick try to pull it up here. And I think that will be easier for all of us. Okay, so I'm going to mirror this. And yes. Okay, so I built this MCP server. It's called Best Reads. And what it does is it can keep track of my preferences, and then I can call a tool where it gives me recommendations. So I'm going to go and add it here. Let's say book MCP. Thankfully, I've added it enough times. And I decided to add a layer of authentication to my MCP server because, you know, in case this business venture takes off, I want others to be able to log in and have their own set of preferences and get recommendations that are catered towards them. So I'm going to authorize this, and it's going to take me back to Claude. And so now I can ask Claude, you know, what books do I like? And it probably won't come up with much because it's a brand new profile, and so it's going to say, I don't really know. I'm going to blame the Wi-Fi because when I was demoing this at home, it was much faster, but it looks like Claude is having some issues, so anybody from Anthropic here to help out. But actually, this is why I have a separate MCP client. This is our playground. And I can connect from here, and I can tell it I like mystery as a genre. And so what it's going to do is it's going to make a tool call to log mystery as one of my favorite genres. And I can tell it I just read Mysterious Tom Ripley. And it is now going to log, okay, this is the book that you've read. And so now when I ask it for a recommendation, can you give me a book recommendation? It is going to call my tool, and it is going to reference that context that I've given to it, and it's going to give me a recommendation, so these 3 books. So now let's say that I'm going to go to the library, I'm going to pick up this book, let's say The Silent Companions, and I'm going to read it, and a few weeks later I'm going to come back. And this time I'm going to come back to a different MCP client or a different AI agent, and let's say I'm going to use Claude. So fingers crossed, come on Claude. Let's tell it I just read The Silent Companions. And hopefully we'll be able to call the tool, but ideally what it's going to show is that it's going to log this as something that I've read. Use MCP to log book I read. But it's going to log it as a book that I read, and then if I ask it for a recommendation, it will give me a recommendation not just based on me liking mystery and the past book that I read, but also this book. And the really cool thing about this is that I can go across multiple MCP clients, and all of them know me as a user. They know what my preferences are, and they can use that to constantly give me better results, even if I constantly change the client that I'm using. So we'll just go back to the slides because technical difficulties, but thank you for bearing with me. Okay. And cool. And so you all are probably wondering, wow, she really just built Goodreads in an MCP server, and all of that happened in 30 minutes. How was that possible? So if you want to do the same thing yourself, one, I'm actually going to post the example of this on the GitHub repo so you can go clone it. And if you want to steal my business idea, go for it. But what I recommend doing is going to the Cloudflare AI demo repo. There's a lot of starter examples. You can get an MCP server deployed in quite literally 30 seconds. You have examples that may use GitHub as an OAuth provider. That's actually the example that I ended up cloning. But you also, if you want to, you can build an MCP server in Python, and it has all of the boilerplating to get you started immediately. But what is actually the secret sauce of building MCP servers on Cloudflare is that these MCP servers come with built-in memory by default. And the reason why this is possible is because the MCP servers that you built on Cloudflare are built on top of something called durable objects. And you can think of a durable object as an agent. It can run some compute, and it also has a storage component to it. And by default, every time you spin up an MCP server, especially one with auth, what happens is we create an agent for each user. And so what that means is every user now has this database that's associated with them where you can store this type of context and then reference it later on when you are making tool calls. And so using user data preferences is not a brand new concept. It has been around for a while. Actually, if you have even an API endpoint, that API endpoint may talk to a database to get information about the user. But then let's say you want to put MCP in front of it. All of a sudden, you're responsible for building out the MCP server, making sure that it integrates with this existing system that you have. You have to manage all of the connections. You have to handle scaling. And there's also a latency component that's added there because it has to go and make that call every time. But what if your agent was your backend? What if your MCP server automatically was able to hold that state, that storage for every user, and that was part of the MCP server itself? That means that actually you wouldn't have to build out any of those components. You wouldn't have to worry about latency because it would be part of the same agent. It would scale automatically. And one of the benefits of deploying it on Cloudflare, shameless plug, is that it gets automatically deployed to our global network, which means that at all times it is running closer to not just the user, but the AI agent that's making calls to it. And so I know I'm talking to a bunch of engineers, and you all probably want to see the code, but this is what it looks like, a tool that sets the favorite genre, for example. It already has the context around the user, which it grabs during the OAuth flow, and it creates this, this agent. And then if I want to store a favorite genre, all I have to call is set state, and it will take the genre and it will add it as context to that one user's database. And then I have my get recommendations tool call, and this is where I want to be able to access that context. And so all I would need to do is call this, this.state, and it would be able to get the database, or it would be able to get the array of genres for that specific user. And then I can use it to build a personalized prompt, so recommend books for somebody that likes X, Y, and Z. And then what I'm actually doing is using Workers AI to run that prompt through an LLM model and get a response and return that back to the user. And so this is all just one small, simple example of how you can use memory within your MCP server to give better responses to clients. But we are actually using this at Cloudflare to power one of our Cloudflare MCP servers that creates a whole secure, isolated environment in which you can run, test, and execute code. And the nice thing is that if you access that environment from Cursor, Windsurf, any MCP client, it is always going to be that same environment. It's going to keep track of all of the interactions that you've been doing. And that's what's really going to make that experience so magical and so great. And so I said earlier on that we're going to deploy an MCP server together, so I'm going to hold on to my word. So we're going to go to the Cloudflare documentation. If you Google build an MCP server, shout out SEO, this is one of the first things that comes up. But really all you have to do is click this button. deploy to Cloudflare. It's going to pull up my dashboard. I'm going to go into my account, and all I have to do is give it a name. So MCP Dev Day. And then I click Create and Deploy, and then it's going to build the MCP server and deploy it on our global network. And one of the benefits of using Cloudflare to deploy your MCP servers is actually all of them, one, are remote. And what that means is by default, they handle the transport methods for remote MCP. So both streamable HTTP, the new transport method, and also server sent events by default. And you don't actually have to write any of the code to handle that. So still building it, success, it's deployed. So let's see it. Going to take this now, and we'll take it to the playground. And the playground that we built actually supports the new streamable HTTP transport method. And so here I can do -mcp. We'll clear all of this. And, I was like, oh no. Woohoo, it connected. And you automatically have these two tools that are pre-built into it. You can add numbers, you can do some calculations. And what the code for that looks like is, this is all you need to add the tool, and all of the transport, everything else that's MCP specific, that is handled for you behind the scenes. So I hope you all get building, and I'll make sure to post the example of the Great Reads MCP server on our GitHub repo. But thank you all for listening. Yeah.